in the scorching heat of the Wild West, where the earth cracked like a broken heart. Sarah Collins stood alone, her rifle untouched, facing the darkness closing in. Last night, she did the unthinkable, knelt beside a dying Apache warrior, his blood seeping into the ranch soil, and offered him the final cup of water from a nearly dry well. Yet this man was more than a stranger. He was a veteran carrying a secret that could destroy everything. Why would Sarah, a widow cast out by the town, risk her life to save the one the world called a monster? Would her act bring salvation, or pull her into a storm of blood and fire? Join Veteran Best Stories as we unravel a tale of courage, betrayal, and an ending that will leave you breathless. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Veteran Best Stories so you never miss these inspiring stories of heroes who walk the razor's edge between life and death. Sarah Collins was not one to fall easily. At 28, she bore wounds both physical and spiritual from a life of relentless hardship. Her husband, Jacob, a veteran who'd fought on the frontier, had vanished without farewell, carrying away all their hopes and dreams. A mysterious winter fever last year claimed him in the dead of a frigid night, leaving Sarah alone amid the indifference of Dusty Creek. They buried Jacob hastily, set up a simple grave, then turned their backs, leaving Sarah to wrestle with sandstorms and whispered malice. Stubborn widow. Too young to live alone. She ought to find another husband. Sarah's modest ranch lay hidden behind a thicket of thorny scrub, exactly 1 mile from Dusty Creek. The earth here was parched, fissures gaping like shed serpent skins, the well nearly bone dry. Each morning, she hauled heavy buckets of water across the drought-scorched fields to give the young wheat a fighting chance. The rotten wooden fence, riddled with holes, would collapse in places every few days. Sarah drove nails back in, pried loose decayed boards, and patched them up as best she could. The sun climbed swiftly, its rays scorching her face like thousands of hot needles, yet she dared not rest. Beads of sweat mixed with dust on her brow, trickling down to stain her collar. She believed in God and prayer, but even her faith wavered at times. She'd wonder, is there any hope for tomorrow when all around me is sand and suffering? Still, Sarah persisted. She rose before dawn, knelt by the stables, watched the horses nuzzle one another, then quietly poured feed into the trough. Those were rare moments of peace, the hush of nature's breath, untainted by cruel gossip or neighborly glances. That morning, as the sun crested the eastern ridge, Sarah's heart skipped a beat. In the gravel-strewn yard behind the stables lay a motionless figure. At first, she thought she'd dreamt it, but as she approached, vivid pools of blood stained the earth. These wounds were not the work of wild beasts. Deep gashes across his chest, strips of buckskin torn away, evidence of a savage struggle. Sarah stepped back, hand trembling at her mouth. She scanned the scene, nothing but sand, thorn bushes, and the drone of insects. No other footprints, no discarded weapons. The man lay there, his long black hair matted over his forehead, his face pale yet still bearing a resolute strength. His eyes remained closed, a high bridge of nose, lips quivering as if to breathe, though each breath was faint. His hand lay limp, a beaded and feathered armlet dangling from his wrist, a token of an Apache warrior, the tribe around which Dusty Creek's darkest tales lingered. Midnight raids, burned homesteads, curses whispered in the dark. Childhood stories surged in Sarah's mind. Her grandmother recounted ruthless Apache warriors, unforgiving toward enemies, prisoners bound in the desert, screams that echoed through the night, smoke and flames blotting out the sky. Dusty Creek's people feared, hated, and drove them away, dreaming of wielding swords and torches to teach them a lesson. Sarah held her breath, knowing she should flee, fetch the hunter beyond the hills to dispose of the body and bury it out of sight. Yet, leaning closer, she heard a soft groan, pain escaping from the stranger's throat. His breath was so weak she feared it might cease altogether. He did not seem enemy, his black eyes half opening without hatred, but a quiet invitation. Come closer. I won't fight back. Sarah could not turn away. She wiped tears away, secretly slipped a scrap of cloth from her pocket, folded it into a makeshift pad. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling the frantic, faltering beat of his heart. Blood soaked the cloth, staining her palm. A small hunting knife from her ridge fence post could not handle wounds this severe, but it might staunch the bleeding enough. Gently she helped him sit against the stable door. His body trembled, sweat glistening under the blazing sun. Sarah soaked a rag in icy well water, applied it to the wound, hoping to dull the pain. Meanwhile, she rummaged through his pockets for anything helpful. Medicine, a metal vial, or pen and paper to learn his name and origin, but she found nothing. He lay still, eyes fluttering, moaning softly. A neigh from the neighboring stall brought her back. Sarah sighed, knowing that failing to save him would invite Dusty Creek's scorn. Widow nursing the enemy, risking her life for an Apache. But then she heard a faint utterance. Sarah. The voice was weak, yet oddly familiar. She froze, bowing her head as more blood seeped from his side. He tried to speak again, voice hoarse. She lifted her eyes to his. Despite the agony, his gaze held unyielding resolve, as if challenging the desert and the shooter. Sarah's heart stirred. She thought of Jacob, his steady shoulder, warm smile, hopeful eyes. She'd lost him, but she could not stand by as another soul fell before her. A quiet light sparked within her. I must save him. Without hesitation, Sarah darted to the wood stove lean-to, grabbed several towels, antiseptic, and a basket of herbs her grandmother had harvested. Returning to the yard, she laid them on the stable sill, carefully turned him onto his side, and bound the wound with clean cloth. The scent of dried herbs mixed with the pink sand. Gradually, his breathing steadied, eyelids drooping as if caught between life and death. Sarah knelt by him, placed a hand on his shoulder, whispered a prayer. May God bless this man, grant him the strength to fight on. The noon sun waned, long shadows stretching across the sand. Sarah helped him into the small barn, arranged a makeshift bed of straw on old boards. He lay there, sweat soaking his back, yet alive. She closed the door, drew a heavy cloth against the sun, then sat beside him, tending each cup of water, each spoonful of thin porridge she hurriedly prepared. Every time he opened his mouth, she bent close, feeding him gently as if he were a child she must nurture. At times, his eyes met hers, conveying wordless gratitude, and in that moment, Sarah felt a new stir of emotion. Not fear or loathing, but deep compassion. Dusty Creek might shun her. Yet Sarah knew that mercy knew no color or lineage. Day after day, she became the silent caretaker of the Apache warrior. Amid the evening smoke and insect hum, two people, two cultures seemingly at odds, found common ground in a matter of life and death. And that moment would change not only the warrior's fate, but the life of Sarah, the stubborn widow, learning to open her heart, to accept, and to love beyond all boundaries. Sarah hesitated for not another moment. She spun on her heel and hurried across the stall floor strewn with dry straw, her hand gripping the dented tin cup that had weathered countless days of wind and sun. Before her lay the bone-dry well, the sole lifeline left on the ranch. Sarah set the cup against the well's edge. The rim barely kissed the water's surface. Then she dipped and filled it to the brim. The gentle clink echoed in the still air, a whispered reminder urging her to act. Returning to the wounded man, she knelt, one knee pressing into the damp earth. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead, mingling with dust and the faint scent of smoke clinging to her clothes. She lifted the tin cup to his lips. His eyes fluttered open, wild, yet possessing an ageless wisdom, as if, in this silent desert, he sought something deep within her soul. Sarah exhaled softly, her heart wounding at the sight. At first he hesitated. He tilted his head, those dark eyes glistening with dawn's dew, watching her instead of drinking. She held the cup steady, dared not look away, fearful that any movement might steal his last strength in this struggle to survive. In that suspended moment, two souls, born of opposing worlds, stood in silence, broken only by the sound of water lapping the cup's rim and his measured breath. Then, slowly, he parted his lips, drank a small sip. The swallow was a soft murmur, a fragile stream of life coursing through his parched throat. Sarah's hand trembled. She saw his fingertips press against the cup's side, leaving a crimson-flecked imprint of dried blood and dust. That single sip was scant, yet enough to rekindle his flickering vitality. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. She had saved a life, yet in doing so, perhaps opened a door to peril. Her heart pounded. Each beat told like an alarm within her chest. She rose, clutching the tin cup to her breast, her gaze fixed on the man, now dozing, his hand quivering. She stepped back toward the barn, unwilling to turn her back too quickly, afraid to miss any sign of danger. The small barn, where she had just arranged a makeshift straw mattress, welcomed her with the whistle of wind through its warped boards. Sarah placed the cup on the old wooden table, then turned to survey the yard. Dusk was descending. The last light painted the sky a fiery crimson, casting the man's silhouette across the barn door. She furrowed her brow, wondering if he could endure the bone-chilling night ahead. All night, sleep eluded Sarah. The wind howled over the roof, whispered warnings through cracks in the walls. She listened to every sound, the stall bell's sway, a horse's uneven hoofbeats next door, and faintly the rasp of nighttime insects. Each note summoned painful memories. Jacob, her husband, laid low on his sickness bed, his eyes dim, pleading for relief, then his face ashen when the mysterious fever claimed him. Sarah closed her eyes, her chest tightening. She vowed, "I will keep him alive. He must survive." Before she could slip into sleep, a strange tremor stirred her. First a gentle quiver, then the damp ground beneath her feet rippled. It was no thunder from the heavens, but the rapid pounding of hooves echoing across the ranch. She sprang up, gripped the oil lantern, slipped through the barn door. Her heart froze at the sight of flickering flames, illuminating dozens of figures along the trail toward the ranch. They neither shouted nor lit campfires. They moved forward in silence, their long shadows etched against the amber sky. bearing the weight of tradition and war. Sarah halted on the barn's threshold, her fingers trembling on the frame. She knew the rifle on her shoulder was mere decoration now. No bullets, no strength to fend off scores of approaching native warriors. The night breeze carried the scent of damp earth and dry smoke, wrapping around her like a curse. The stalls lay silent. Only the occasional shuffle of hooves broke the stillness. Ahead stood the man she had saved that morning. In the lantern's wavering light, his pale face and pronounced cheekbones were visible, the crude stitches across his chest still fresh. He sat astride a tall horse, his posture proud, a weary warrior's resolve undiminished. He dismounted. The echo of his horse's hooves striking the hard ground resonated with solemn determination. He limped toward her, each step a testament to life and death. Sarah held her breath, dared not avert her eyes. The man paused before the barn, bowing his head in a slow, graceful gesture. No words were spoken, yet he raised a hand in thanks. His whisper came in Apache. She could not decipher it, but within the foreign syllables, Sarah sensed genuine gratitude and respect. Those lurking in the night halted as well. Their eyes softened from steel to something contemplative. After a brief exchange, he signaled his comrades. In that timeless moment, the Apache warriors laid down their arms, bows, spears, knives, all placed upon the dust. Their gazes shifted from menace to reflection, as if pondering truths grander than battle or bloodlust. Then, without farewell, they melted back into the darkness, leaving the nameless man she'd yet to know sitting beneath the stable eaves, leaning against a basket of straw. Sarah stood motionless on the barn porch, her heart ready to burst. She had witnessed a miracle of mercy and compassion transcending every boundary. The Apache warrior, once Dusty Creek's sworn enemy, had been saved by her hand, and in turn, he had persuaded his people to sheathe their weapons and accept her, a stubborn widow, as their savior. This little ranch, in the heart of the barren desert, had become the setting for an unfinished story, a tale of courage, empathy, and hope sprouting amid death and hatred. As the night receded, Sarah stepped into the yard and knelt beside the man. He looked at her, his eyes glistening in the lantern light. No words were necessary. That single look conveyed everything. This encounter would reshape their destinies, and perhaps that of Dusty Creek itself. On cracked, arid land, beneath howling wind and starless night, a new beginning emerged, the beginning of healing, of shared humanity, and of faith in a brighter tomorrow. Dusty Creek awoke each day beneath a thick fog of gossip. Rumors about Sarah Collins and the Apache warrior she had inadvertently saved spread like wildfire across the parched prairie. Whether under blazing sun or swirling desert wind, whispers of the stubborn widow and the savage echoed in the saloon, at the general store, even on the steps of the little town church. They branded her a traitor to the community, a looming threat destined to bring death to Dusty Creek. Sarah had grown accustomed to scornful glances and idle chatter. Each time she passed the grocery counter, she sensed the oppressive air, the scent of flour and drip coffee mingling with the whistle of boiling water. Yet over it all hung the acrid odor of smoked meat and stale candy, reminders of the peaceful days before Jacob's departure. The townsfolk refused to forgive her compassion. They believed anyone allied with an Apache must be dangerous, unworthy of a place among honest citizens. Amid that storm of reproach, Sarah remained silent. She still rose before dawn, donned her faded linen dress and wide-brimmed hat, fetched water in the fields, tended the horses, repaired the broken fence. And though countless eyes pried upon her, she never once turned to scold. In her heart, she called the warrior Kail, a name she gave him as a marker of new beginnings on this barren ranch. Kail never asked for refuge in a land that had long regarded him enemy. Each morning, he quietly appeared by the stables, shouldered a shovel, sawed wood, mended fences, drew water from the deep well. The wound across his chest still leaked blood, darkening the torn buckskin, yet he never complained. He spoke only one brief phrase whenever Sarah sought to stop him. "You give, I repay." Those words meant more than gratitude. They proclaimed a man's dignity and duty. Kail required no obligation of thanks. He only wished to lend strength so that this ranch, Sarah's dream, would not crumble, as he believed she deserved to hold on to hers. At nightfall, Sarah and Kail would sit on the barn porch, beside a weathered table and 2 simple chairs, to share their supper. Though the fare was thin cornmeal porridge and a few slices of smoked meat, around the flickering hearth they found a warmth richer than any feast. Kail always waited for Sarah to take the first bite, not as an assertion of male authority, but as a gesture of respect, honoring the woman who had forgiven him and saved his life. Kail had never set foot inside Sarah's small cabin. He asked nothing of her past, never mentioned the stubborn widow nickname the town had given her. At most, his quiet gaze would drift to her cupboards, the old books, and the photograph of Jacob with his gentle smile, but he spoke no word about them. His silent presence alone soothed the emptiness on her ranch. One morning, Sarah ventured into town for flour. As she crossed the grocery threshold, the air thickened. Brody's men, the wealthy land baron who long coveted Sarah's acreage, gathered around the counter, sneering as they set down their drinks. Their knotted hands cradled mugs as they leered. "Heard you're harboring an Apache, Sarah. Nights get long out here." Their laughter struck her like a stone, crushing her spirit. Sarah lowered her eyes, said nothing. She paid quickly for flour and a few cans of provisions, then turned to leave. In that moment, her spine felt ice cold. She wondered if saving Kail, this stranger, was worth the town's contempt. On her way back, Sheriff Dawson, once a neutral ally, called after her with a gentle yet anxious tone. "People are afraid, Sarah. Be careful." He offered no threats, only urged her to protect herself. Sarah nodded softly, thanked him, but her heart carried a chilling ache. By the time she reached the ranch, dusk had fallen gray. Sarah sat on the barn porch, where the wild evening breeze rustled the thorn bushes and carried the scent of damp earth. She watched Kail sharpening his hunting knife, the tool he used to cut wood and defend himself. The metal bit against the stone in a rhythmic rasp. Sparks flew like fleeting stars, only to vanish in the darkness. Sarah exhaled. The sting in her eyes carried unshed tears. "Dusty Creek will never forgive me," she whispered, her voice fragile as a spider's thread under unseen pressure. She did not collapse, yet loneliness and sorrow cut at her pride like a blade. Kail set the knife aside, resting it on a bundle of straw. He looked at her with deeper gaze than by daylight. After a moment's silence, he lifted his head and spoke in a warm baritone. "You gave water to a dying man. That is no shame. That is the essence of humanity." His words were like cool wind across a parched desert, soothing Sarah's weary soul. She felt the sincerity in every syllable, every breath. In that instant, the sun-baked dunes no longer felt hostile. but as if creation itself had reached out to comfort her spirit. Yet Sarah knew the town's quiet was but the calm before the storm. Day by day, hour by hour, she counted down to when those contemptuous faces would once again ignite in fierce anger. Dusty Creek was preparing to rise in protest, and she, like a resilient desert bloom, would face a trial more severe than Jacob's death. In the still of night, as Kael returned to his straw bed and Sarah stepped into the barn, she closed the door and sat by the hearth. The flames licked the earthen bricks, emitting a tender warmth. Sarah brushed away tears, closed her eyes in silent prayer. Grant me courage to guard my faith and the one who believes in me. For if I fail, this ranch will become a graveyard for hope, and Dusty Creek will never know that compassion can conquer the fiercest hatred. And in the final moment before sleep claimed her, Sarah felt Kael's hand gently rest on her shoulder. That alone was enough to show her. Though the world might turn its back, one soul stood beside her, ready to journey onward, and together they would write the next chapter of courage and hope upon this land that never ceases to test the human spirit. Night 3 fell under silver-gray clouds stretched across the sky. Gusting winds rattled branches, warning of the storm to come. Sarah Collins, just as she hurried to double-check the stable door, heard strange sounds outside, heavy boots stomping on damp earth, agitated whispers, then screams tearing through the night. She needed no second guess. A red flame flickered beyond the fence. She gripped her rusty rifle, long devoid of ammunition, and melted into the shadows. Before she could steady herself, 5 masked figures burst into the yard, torches ablaze in each hand. "Come out, widow!" growled one in a worn leather coat, his words echoing like a curse. A torch sailed into the chicken coop. Immediately the dry straw ignited. Thick yellow smoke billowed. Chickens squawked wildly, their panicked flapping masked by the acrid burn. Sarah's eyes stung. She stepped forward, bare feet grinding on the cold gravel, her gaze blazing with resolve. The rifle in her hands was now mere decoration, but she would not relent. Amid the chaos, Sarah spotted the leader, Brody, Dusty Creek's richest land baron. His eyes glinted with hatred. A cruel half-smile curled his lips. "I warned you, Sarah. Consort with savages, and you'll lose everything," he snarled like hot coals. As fury surged within her, a tall figure emerged at the edge of the flame's glow. Kael, the Apache warrior she had saved. He did not flee, nor did he hesitate. He strode forward, head tilted, eyes calm as a dare. In a flash, Kael moved. He disarmed one attacker, seized a red-hot iron rod from another, drove it into his opponent's shoulder. Bones cracked. Screams pierced the night. Another man collapsed, groaning. Kael's assault took mere moments. 4 of the 5 lay writhing in the dirt, the smell of charred flesh mingling with drifting ash. The last man staggered to his feet, muttered unintelligibly before vanishing into the night. Brody froze, astonished and enraged. Kael paused, sheathed his triangular blade, blood glistening on its edge. He stepped before Brody, voice warm yet icy. "Enough!" Sarah, heart racing, staggered forward, raised her rifle in defiance. Her voice trembled yet rang with conviction. "Come any closer, and I won't hesitate to fire." The coop's flames flickered behind her. Smoke spiraled skyward, but Sarah's words cut through it all. Brody spat, turned away in bitter disappointment, his parting threat echoing. "This isn't over." Once Brody's silhouette faded beyond the fence, the yard fell silent. Only embers and bloodstains remained. Sarah sank beside Kyle, her hand shaking as she touched his wounded shoulder, where the red-hot rod had seared him. Kyle met her gaze, his eyes brimming with silent gratitude. No words passed between them, yet amid the soot and dying embers, an unspoken pact was forged. They would stand together, facing every storm yet to come. Throughout the night, Sarah tended Kyle's wound. Outside, wind battered the barn, rattling the thatch, yet inside, warmth emanated from the medicated cloth and Kyle's steady breathing. He said nothing, only sat still, allowing her care. His half-closed eyes glowed with bittersweet strength. Sarah's anxieties dissolved. Dusty Creek's scorn felt distant now. At first light, mist hovered over the parched fields. Sarah opened the barn door to the smoldering yard. Blackened straw lay scattered. Coils of smoke drifted upward. Mud-caked footprints marred the broken tiles. Streaks of dried blood stained the ground. The only figure left was Kyle, seated on the porch, his shoulder bandaged with her careful hands. He stared into the dawn, where early rays stirred the dry grass. Sarah did not approach. She remained a few paces away, her eyes tracing his every movement. Silence now spoke more than words. It was trust, a testament that they were no longer alone in this desolate land. Dusty Creek might wait to strike back. Brody might rally fresh forces, but on this soil, Sarah and Kyle had found a shared strength, the power of courage and compassion rising above hatred. Before the first dawn fully broke, Sarah managed a weary smile. Kyle turned, nodded gently. No words were needed, both understood. They would protect the ranch, protect each other, and together continue the story of souls that refused to yield. Dusty Creek did not yet know what fate awaited them, but on that humble barn porch, a flame of hope had been kindled, brighter than any torch. The days passed in silence on Sarah Collins's ranch, and Dusty Creek seemed to hold its breath in eerie stillness. No more pebbles flung at window panes. No more blood-curdling threats yelled in the night. Only the vast expanse of desert pressing in, an invisible blade constricting every breath of the townsfolk. A single scrutinizing glance, a casual sigh, enough to give Sarah gooseflesh, her heart threatening to shatter. On that parched land, she still rose before dawn, slipped into the faded linen jacket Jacob had gifted her, carrying with it the faint breeze of memories from days before dust and hatred. She ventured into the fields to inspect the stables, swept the stalls, patched the cracks in the thatch roof, then knelt to fix the rusty well pump. Despite the scorching sun, sweat trickled down her brow, yet her heart now beat with a different rhythm, not loneliness or fear, but a warming presence, as if someone stood by her side. Kyle, the Apache warrior she had named in her heart when she first saved his life, had become more than a guardian. He was now inseparable from the ranch itself. In the early days, Kyle quietly stood by the margins, watching her carry water, watching her apply poultices to his wound. Simple yet heartfelt care. Before long, he took it upon himself to mend the stable roof, shave away the rot from the boards, even carve a new nameplate for the horses. In that natural silence, the sound of his hammer on wood rang like a precious song echoing across the cold desert. One afternoon, as slanted sunlight streamed through the cactus spines, Sarah passed Kyle, who was deftly sketching on a thin plank of wood. She paused, curious at the graceful lines he etched, the silhouette of a hawk in flight. its sharp beak, wings outstretched as though yearning to touch the distant sky. The beaded and feather necklace he had painstakingly woven lay beside the sketchboard, a gift to her when the sun dipped behind the far ridge. In his eyes shone a quiet pride, like a warrior who had learned for the first time the language of love. That night, they gathered by the crackling fire in the yard, smoke mingling with the glittering canopy of stars. The insects' hum composed a ceaseless country melody. Then Sarah spoke in a low voice, her tone heavy with emotion. "Jacob, he used to believe kindness was weakness. In his eyes, I was an ideal to uphold, not my true self." Kael looked up. His gentle gaze followed the flames as they leapt and fell. Tapping his knife's tip against his palm, he exhaled slowly. "You have always deserved to be yourself." His words fell like warm rain upon the arid desert. Sarah closed her eyes, each syllable awakening the part of her soul she thought had died long ago in solitude. Relief washed through her heart. She understood she was not deficient. Compassion was no sin. But peace could not endure. A horrifying discovery shattered all hope. One midday, when the sun's rays cut like blades, Sarah pried open Jacob's old wooden chest. Most items lay corroded, yet the wood's surface still felt warm beneath her fingers. She found an envelope tied with a faded ribbon, signed simply, "Brody and Sons, Trade Agreement." Her chest tightened. Stepping back, she trembled as she untied the ribbon and unfolded the letter, the ink faint but legible. Jacob had planned to sell this ranch to Brody, the very man who had once offered to buy her land before the mysterious fever claimed him. He had never told her a word. Every conversation, every promise, just schemes to seize control. Pain lanced through her like a sharpened knife. Sarah refolded the letter and lifted tear-filled eyes to Kael, who had crept up beside her at the faintest sound. Her voice cracked as she whispered, I thought he loved me." Kael took the letter from her hand, folded it without reading further, and laid it on the oil-stained wooden table. "He loved power, not you." His words resonated through the quiet room like a final verdict. Sarah clutched the letter to her chest. Betrayal sharpened into a weapon in her mind. She knew she must act. She could no longer bear that humiliation in darkness. The next afternoon, Sarah silently tied back her hair, donned the simplest yet most dignified dress she owned, a smoky blue with finely stitched cuffs and hem. She mounted the horse lent by Mr. Thompson and rode the rugged trail into Dusty Creek. Golden sunlight bathed the town, yet the air felt heavy, as if blocking the brightness. Townsfolk watched her with curiosity. A few men snickered as she passed. At the small courthouse, Sarah led her horse onto the porch, the letter clutched in her hand. Judge Carver, a stern countenance softened by hidden kindness, looked up as she entered. The wooden courtroom smelled of paper and ink, the red carpet worn thin at the judge's bench. Sarah placed the letter on the desk, lifted her chin, her voice firm. "Judge Carver, this is proof that Brody is attempting to steal my land. Jacob once signed away this ranch to him without my knowledge." Judge Carver frowned, removed his glasses, and read a few lines with deliberate care. Silence enveloped the room, only the rustle of paper. Finally, he nodded. "I will review the contract and summon all parties concerned. Rest assured, Ms. Collins." It felt as if a mountain of stone had been lifted from her shoulders. Sarah lowered her head in gratitude, then turned to leave, her heart still heavy, but flickering with hope. She rode back to the ranch under the pale glow of dusk. Desert blooms glistened with dew beneath the wavering lantern light. Saturday morning dawned with the first pink streaks of sunrise piercing the distant mountain ridge, painting the sky above Dusty Creek in fiery hues. Sarah Collins and Cale sat astride their horses, silently surveying the scene, the small square packed tight with townsfolk, children shyly clinging to their mothers, cowboys frowning over wooden barricades, daring her with every glare. Amid the crowd stood Brody, the notorious land baron, chest swelling with pride, his gaze triumphant as though Sarah's ranch were already in his grasp. Together, Sarah and Cale galloped down the sandy slope, coming to a halt at the square's edge. Cale stroked his horse's mane, while Sarah smoothed her skirt and tightened the reins. The air was so hushed it felt suffocating. Every eye locked on her, awaiting the final showdown. On the opposite side, Brody folded his arms, sneering with certainty that her fate was sealed. Sarah felt her own breath catch, her heart pounding, yet she did not waver. At that moment, the clatter of footsteps on the courthouse's wooden floor echoed out. Judge Carver, his vest immaculate, face lined with stern kindness, stepped forward, clutching a thick file of documents. He raised the papers to chest level, his seasoned voice booming. Upon reviewing all records, there exists no lawful contract in accordance with state law. This land has and always will belong to Ms. Collins. His declaration cracked through the clear morning like thunder, the crowd frozen in shock. A tense silence gave way to murmurs. Murmurs grew into uproar. Brody's eyes bulged. He lunged for his old Colt, shouting, "She's lying! She slept with that Apache bastard!" His words spat venom, fanning the crowd's fury. The square erupted in chaos, shouts and jeers ricocheting off the wooden walls. In that suspended instant, time itself seemed to still, every heart gripped by anticipation, waiting to see who would act first. Cale did not hesitate. In a blur, he charged Brody, wind seeming to thrust him forward through the throng. Sarah heard the crack of a gunshot, a deafening report, but the bullet whizzed wide, cutting a silent swath through the air. Cale seized Brody's pistol, twisted him down to the dusty ground without killing him. A swift blow from Cale's short sword struck Brody's arm, bone protesting with a sickening crack. Cale's calm command cut through the din. "Stop!" The square fell deathly silent. Brody gaped up in stunned terror, eyes wide, his struggles failing against Cale's unyielding strength. No curse escaped him, only a final icy glare, before Cale released him, allowing the land baron to scramble up, white-faced and rattled. Judge Carver stepped forward, handing the file directly to Sarah. "You've won." Sarah took the papers, her heart both bursting and trembling with emotion. The world seemed to shatter. Small cheers rose, spreading across the square. Those who once sneered now bowed their heads in respect and astonishment. Sarah glanced at Cale, silent gratitude shining in her eyes. No words were needed. This moment had already written a new chapter. That night, under the pale moonlight filtering through the cactus shadows, Sarah and Cale sat together on the barn porch, shoulders touching. The desert breeze softly ruffled their hair, carrying the scent of campfire smoke and dry pine. Above them, a million stars burned brightly, as if witnessing the turning point of their lives. Sarah whispered, "I thought I'd lose everything." Cale turned to her, his eyes offering reassurance. "Instead, you found me." Those words fell like gentle rain on the parched sands of her heart, sowing seeds of new hope. Sarah rested her head on Kael's shoulder, warm and steadfast, ending her long solitude. In the days that followed, Sarah's ranch blossomed anew. Rows of greens unfurled, the windmill's blades turned steadily, the horses thundering across the fields with glossy manes. Kael did not leave. He remained not as a visitor, but as the very soul of the land. Each morning he joined Sarah in tending the corn, nurturing the tomatoes, then patrolled the irrigation channels. Their laughter rang out, dissolving every doubt that once lingered. One evening, as the sunset stained the sky purple, Kael led Sarah to the well at the yard's center. Lanterns hung from the wooden frame, casting a honeyed glow. From his pouch, he drew a small necklace, dark beads, a single raven feather, and a slender wave-shaped stone. With solemn care, he fastened it around Sarah's neck, his eyes intent. "It means you are not alone." Sarah touched the necklace. Tears gleamed in her eyes. No words were needed. Her tears spoke volumes. In the quiet hush, her smile shone brightest of all. Yet fate had one final secret to reveal, one that made Sarah's heart constrict. In Kael's belt pouch, she brushed against something hard. She drew it out, a battered Federal Service badge, the emblem of a veteran who once fought alongside those who hunted his people. Her pulse quickened. Kael met her gaze, his voice rich with distant sorrow. "I have lost everything, as you have. My comrades, my purpose. But here, we have the chance to choose anew." Sarah paused, closed her eyes to feel the echo of his words. Then she gripped his hand firmly, softly replying, "And we will choose." The vast desert sky seemed to lean in, the breeze murmuring a vow. No past pain could overshadow the longing for love and protection. Under that brilliant moon, Sarah and Kael stood hand in hand, affirming a truth. A home is not mere land. It is the courage to rise again, to transcend prejudice and begin anew. Dusty Creek may once have turned its back, may once have judged them for their pasts, but now, amidst the flourishing ranch, they had found each other and discovered the enduring power of hope and humanity. Sarah and Kael's story is proof that compassion can ignite even the darkest deserts. A single cup of water, a simple nod, and a heart brave enough to love changed their destiny. Have you ever risked everything for what's right, even when the world turned its back? Share your story in the comments below. Hit like if you believe in the power of courage, and share this video with friends and family across the U.S. Let's spread the unbreakable spirit of our veterans. Subscribe to Veteran Best Stories for more inspiring journeys ahead.